we got the deadwood on last night, and the two bolts are sticking up over there and still inside there. We'll have to saw those off, but got it in. So now I'm thinking about the coaming, because that's really kind of the next big major task. And the book says spring a batten off of the shear clamp, and when we did the shear clamp we had to bend it down from about frame 10 up until it was low enough up here that we could get the deck beams on. And we need to make a piece of oak that will go from about frame 11 up to here, and then the coaming eventually ends up here. So they say spring a batten because that's to give you a fair curve. So here's a batten. And I kept trying to use some of them that I had from the cedar strip canoe, and they were too thick, so I ended up cutting this all the way down to a little less than 1/4 inch. And then I could get it flexible enough that it would bend without being a problem. And even so I can manipulate it just a little bit. Then I went on the plan, which I've got on the wall back there, and I measured in from the side on the shear line right here. And from here across the face of frame 7 is about 1 7/8 inches. So we know 1/8 of an inch is an inch, so that's 15. So it's about 15 inches from here to here. You can see how the coaming has to come up and bend up all the way up here to frame 6. So it goes over the deck, the frame 7, and culminates up here to point. So it'll be on the shear clamp until we get to about frame, this is 11, and I've got to make a piece of oak that's going to attach to the shear clamp and come up and attach to the face or the front or the top of the bulkhead there on 7. And this distance is about 15 inches, or 15 inches. It was 1 7/8 inches. 2 inches would be 16 inches. So, knowing that, I come back here and I can measure in. I got this batten clamped on here just aft of 11. So 7, 8, 9, 10, yes, 11. And come here and let's see, all the way up to where I marked up with a pencil, right at 15 inches. Now, this piece of oak that goes up here appears to be about 1 inch to 1.25 inches thick. And we may try to steam bend it, or I may just try to saw it out of a big piece. And I haven't decided yet. So anyway, so I've got my batten on here, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, how can I transfer this curve onto some other piece so that I can not have to try to just use this. So I found a piece of scrap plywood, and I took the plywood, I just held it up on here, and I took a pencil and I drew a line under it, and I took it to the bandsaw, and this is the curve that I came out with. And it's really very close. You can see here that it just fits in there very nicely. So if I could fashion a piece of oak to have this kind of shape and this kind of curve, I should be able to make that to fit from the shear clamp up here to the face of here. So I'm thinking to myself, well, now do I have another piece of wood laying around so I could do one for the other side? And I happen to stumble into this mold that's actually the mold for the stem pattern. Look how weird this is. I put it down on here, and if this clamp's not here, the dang thing almost fits up almost exactly right, even to the point where it follows this batten all the way up here to the post it'll be at. I don't see any reason not to use it because this is absolutely a fair curve and it would have some symmetry with the front of the boat. So, even if I put it on here, we can see how close it is. And I actually think it's a more fair curve than what I cut out. So anyway, I thought that was very odd, and I think I'm just going to use it. And so we'll see. Got a couple of 4-foot pieces of oak in the steam box. And the oak that I'm using is actually oak that I started to use when I was doing the shear clamps. And I think you can see a piece laying over here on the wood pile there, that one that's kind of diagonal. Anyway, we cut off 2 4-foot pieces off of that, and that's currently in the steam box, and that went in at about 2 o'clock. So it's about 1.5 inches by about 1 inch. And I already cut a little bevel in it. We'll see that later. These are the pieces that I'm making that need to go up here coming off the shear clamp where that batten is. We were filming some of that the other night. Alright, so in order to try to achieve the bending of this curve after it comes out of the steam box, I've made a jig. And I've actually made 2 of them because I need 2 of these boards. And so I used the stem pattern and I drew that curve onto the board, and then I thought, I think I'm going to need to maybe oversteam this just a little bit, or overbend it just a little bit. You don't want to oversteam, overbend, because there's a possibility that it could spring back just a little bit. So I just took some measurements here, and I started out like at 1/8 of an inch. See where I've got aft written on here? Okay, at that point the curve's the same. Then I came out about 1/4 inch there, then 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch, 3/8, all the way till I got up here into the middle of the bend, and I'm out at about 3/4 of an inch more than what the actual curve was. And I've made 2 of these. There's a second one up here. And I got both pieces of oak in the steamer right now. So I think we'll have to leave them in there 1.5 hours, and then we'll just take clamps and try to bend them on here, and we'll let them sit for a good 24 hours to let them cool off and hopefully maintain that bend. This was our first attempt to bend the oak. Came out of the steam box and just didn't seem like it wanted to bend. We really clamped on it and forced it, and then it snapped. So we realized we were either going to need to steam it longer or take a different approach. This was our second attempt. We had run the oak through the saw and created a kerf in the middle of it, so effectively we were only bending half as much. We left it in the steamer about 1 hour, and these went on the mold and bent much easier compared to our first attempt. In the first time-lapse video, it was probably hard to tell because the camera was set up far away and it was moving fast, but we were trying to steam bend this oak. It was this piece here, and that's about 1 1/4 inches by about 1 3/4, and you can see there that it split, and we were really having a hard time getting it to bend, and it just felt like it hadn't steamed long enough. It'd been in there 90 minutes. Of course, it's kiln dried, so that was probably our problem. If you look carefully here, you can kind of see that it split right along that grain, and that grain came out over on that edge, and it's just couldn't take the stress. No knots in it. The grain looks pretty straight for the most part, but not on that edge. Well, anyway, so came up with another idea, and I saw Acorn to Arabella. I saw Alex and Steven do this with their frames. I put a kerf in it. You can see right there, I ran the saw right down the middle of it. I ran these down, just ran them on the table saw. You can hardly see it there. You might be able to see it a little bit right there, but this effectively let me bend these more like as 2 as opposed to 1 single piece, and it'll be fine that way. Well, here you can see on the end how much it gives. There's close to 1/2 inch there at least in between it's really hard to see there. See what I'm saying? So over this whole length on this end, you don't cut it all the way through. That cut started about maybe 5 inches up in there and then runs the whole length of it. Here, like I had some writing on here before, you can see how it's off center now. And it gets worse the further you go up until you get to the end there like that. But anyway, we got them both bent, and my mold worked. Now this is going to be over bent. You can see in there my line, that's the curve that I actually need. So I'm in hopes, I'm going to leave this on here at least 24 hours. You can really see that curved line in there on that bottom one better. I'm in hopes that when we take it off of here, it's going to have a little spring back, but I expect it to hold pretty close to that. So anyway, we'll see as we try to mount it up on the shear clamp and on the front of frame 7. As always, thanks for watching. My whole effort with these videos is to try to make a record of what we've done and to help any other person that is taking on a similar project. Good luck to all.